So welcome to this Armidale Regional Council meeting on the 13th of May. We, the councillors of the Armidale region, declare that we will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interest of our community and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in us to the best of our skills and judgment. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Armidale regional communities pay tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture. Now this meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recordings of the non-confidential parts of the meeting will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised by council to do so. Now, I do not believe we have any people having their say. And councillors, could I also ask you to switch your mobile phones either off, or you can't switch them off, but turn them on to silent, please. Thank you. Let's move on. By the look of it, there's no apologies for this meeting. Have any councillors got disclosures of interest? Councillor O'Connor? Councillor O'Connor, you have to turn your microphone on to speak.
You're going to do that. I thought you were doing that, but never mind. Look, it's just a very minor one, not substantial or significant, which is that I'm a member of the Friends of the ABC. So that would relate to one of the motions this meeting, but I don't intend to excuse myself on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Any other councillors just have a disclosure of interest? No. Okay. There's no mayoral minute. So moving on to item 7.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Can I move or put forward a procedural motion? I'll just read it out if that's okay. With utmost respect and fairness for fellow councillors, and in light of the decision made yesterday by the Land and Environment Court regarding injunction orders in relation to apprehension of bias and potential conflict for certain councillors, that notice of motions 8.3, 8.7 and 15.2 be deferred. The substance of the motions mentioned above are integral to the matter before the court. Therefore, it would be unfair and inappropriate for council to consider these motions while the substantive matter is still before the court and yet to be finalised. I'm just wondering, could I ask for a seconder, please?
Yes, seconder, Councillor Widders. So Councillor Gray moved, Councillor Widders. Just to clarify to all councillors, that's items 8.3, 8.7 and 15.2. Procedural matter, go to the vote. Those people, if you can go to your phones, or Councillor Tiley?
It's not a procedural matter, Mr. Mayor. I speak against the motion. If you read the Land and Environment Court orders, which came through late last night, that relates solely to a notice of motion to terminate.
So Tiley, the procedure motion is purely that we will put it to the vote. So I will put that procedure motion to the vote. Those people who wish to speak, Councillor, no, there's a procedural motion that's been moved and seconded.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I move a dissent from the ruling. I move a dissent from your ruling, Mr. Mayor.
So.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr. Mayor, the terms of the order are very clear and very specific, and they only involve item 7.1 of the meeting that was to be held that was held and incored on the 11th of May. They have nothing to do, they only relate to that motion or a motion of similar import, i.e. a termination motion. So what the procedural or what the motion that Councillor Gray has put up is much, much wider than that and goes beyond the terms of the order that was delivered late last night, and it's up to each individual councillor, I think, who's moving these, who wishes to move these. I can forecast that I intend to actually withdraw some of the motions that I've got up, just because I've decided to do that. But I think that it's in my entitlement to do that. I don't want to be ruled by a so-called procedural motion, which is in fact is not a procedural motion, but a substantive motion to eliminate.
Since your dissent is like a procedure motion, Councillor O'Connor, we will vote on, I will put that because it's been moved and seconded. I will put your dissent and then I will put the procedure motion because a procedure motion can be put. So can you please go to your...
It's a dissent to your ruling.
Motion. Mr. Mayor,
Councillor,
can I get clarification of what those, I can't see on my screen. Can I be told what those three motions involve, please?
No, Councillor, we are not debating those three at the moment, or voting on the three. We are voting on a dissent from Councillor O'Connor that's been seconded by Councillor Robinson. So then I'll come back to you for clarification. So what we're voting on purely is the dissent. So can I get you to go to Stacey, ready for a vote, please?
So we are voting on not the issue, but we are voting. What are we actually voting on then?
Councillor Gillespie, we are voting. Councillor O'Connor had a dissent, and we're voting on the dissent. Then it's like a procedural motion. So that is all we're voting on, Councillor Gillespie.
With respect, Mr. Mayor, perhaps you could identify for Councillor Tiley's benefit the dissent from what, and I would say it's a dissent from your ruling that this is a procedural motion.
This is a procedure motion that's been put by Councillor Gray and seconded by Councillor Witters. You are dissenting against a procedure, for those two councillors to have a procedural motion.
But with great respect, Mr. Mayor, that's not the case. I'm dissenting from your ruling that this is a procedural motion. I'm saying it's a substantive motion, as Councillor Tiley has pressed.
I can't even get onto me voting now. It hasn't even been put up, and I was waiting in line, and it's not working.
I've got the same problem. I can't see any voting thing on my screen.
I haven't got any vote. I haven't got any voting here, and I've got Stacey's meant to register in with me, and she hasn't. So, que sera.
And also, it would be good if we could see the screen and note the numbers in which we're trying to actually see the procedural motion. It would be very helpful rather than 220. Just actually see what we're trying to vote.
Councillors, I'm in the same position as you about the voting, so let's resolve that issue first.
My screen's coming up with presenter not found.
No, before.
Mr. Mayor, couldn't we just vote with our hands?
I found it. It's popped up, finally.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to do this, but it's come up on Stacey's software as procedural motion 1. But in fact, this is, so long as it's clear from in the minute taking that this is a dissent from your ruling, not the actual so-called procedural motion 1.
Yeah, Dr. Mayor, if you don't mind me answering that, Councillor O'Connor, that they were put in prior to the meeting, so they were pre-set up. There was no dissent motions pre-set up in the system. So what Stacey did was set up the motions, amendments, and then procedural motions. So she's just opened procedural motion 1 as it was the most applicable to this vote.
I still don't have a poll up on mine. It says I'm in Stacey's presentation, but it's not displayed.
I don't have one on mine either.
Councillors, yeah, please bear with us. I'm in the same
And I
boat.
haven't got it either.
Can we, Stacey, if we can try and get this issue resolved, please?
Yeah, Dr. Mayor,
At least
Stacey's
mine is
asking
working.
councillors could refresh their page. It should be visible.
Yeah, I've done that 3 times, and it just comes up as a blue screen after I've done it. Just blank blue screen.
Perhaps try exiting and re-entering.
Yeah, I've tried that. It doesn't
Yep,
work.
done that as well.
Can I suggest we vote? Can I suggest, Mr. Mayor, we vote with our hands? Otherwise, we're going to be here all day.
Mr. Brown, what's the issue? Are there any issues that we can't vote by hands?
No procedural issue with that, Dr. Mayor. I believe Ms. Drew's with you now. She might be able to resolve the problem.
Couldn't run a bath.
I'm all sorted now, and thanks for letting us know of your talents there, Councillor Gletley.
That comes up with that.
And you don't remember the password?
So, councillors, we will have to do it otherwise we will be here all day. In the voting, can you make sure your hand is close to your face, please? So all those in favour of the dissent motion, raise their hands. Six. Andrew, did you count 6? Yep. And those
sorry,
against?
we counted 5, Dr. Mayor.
So
Sorry,
please,
yep, Councillor Murat. Thank you.
And those against? Okay, the dissent holds.
Can I suggest a second procedural motion that we discuss the validity
No.
and whether we want to vote on something as each motion comes?
We have still the procedural motion that's been put by Councillor Gray and seconded by Councillor Witters. So we'll deal with that. Those people in favour of the procedural motion. Oh, before I go on, Councillor.
With respect, Mr. Mayor, the motion of dissent has been sustained, so it's no longer a procedural motion. It's just a motion. Happy to deal with it on that basis, but it does mean there can be debate. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. What I wanted to do is to clarify to Councillor Murat that 8.3 is a request for information by Councillor Robinson. 3 parts. 8.7 is legal advice provided to CEO by Councillor Robinson in 2 parts. And 15.2 is in the closed session, and it is legal advice provided to CEO. So are you happy with that, Councillor Murat? Thank you.
Excuse me, Dr. Mayor, can I please ask for clarification through you to
Oh, sorry.
How this is a substantive motion rather than a procedural motion when at our last meeting there was a number of items deferred to this meeting today through a procedural motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Because the dissent motion was voted up, then this becomes a normal procedural motion. So substantive motion. So you have the right to speak for, so does Councillor Witters, and then it'll be the normal debate process. So I'll hand it across to you since it is a substantive motion. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. The reason for putting forward this motion was purely to be respectful and to offer fairness, because it does, as the motion says, there seems to be integral parts of the notice of motions put forward for deferment, that there is integral information or requests within that are directly linked to the matters before the court. And it was only as a matter of courtesy and respect for fellow councillors that I put forward this. That there's nothing but respect, kindness, and empathy for the situation that they're in, that this motion's put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Witters.
Yeah, I'll concur with what Councillor Gray has just said. I think good governance and good leadership shows fairness and for understanding for other councillors. And I believe that these motions relate to the matters that were to be dealt with the ECM within March, which is under the same issues revolving around Monday's ECM, which is on the 11th. And because of the continuation of the issues within the Land and Environment Court, I think it's fair on the other councillors that these motions be deferred until after that issue has been resolved.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. Speaker against the motion? Councillor Robertson.
Can't you see me?
I believe that a lot of our problems and a lot of the legal costs we might incur come from the fact that we've been unable to get relevant quality information on which to make good decisions on behalf of our community. And if we can't get the good information and we can't make high quality decisions, then we're not just disrespecting all councillors, we're disrespecting our entire community. These issues have been long-standing issues that have been relevant for nearly the entire past year. And if we don't get this information, the problems will drag on and on and on, and we will not be able to heal the problems that have faced us. Therefore, we have to get the information on which to make the relevant quality decisions to serve our community. And it's just disrespectful to say anything else. We need that information to make good quality decisions. If we don't get it, we will then be making decisions in the dark and our problems will continue, and that's the last thing anybody should want. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion? So, Councillor O'Brien, you wish to speak for the motion?
Yes. Oh, to support.
No. You're speaking for the motion. So, Speaker for? Okay, Councillor Gray, your right to reply.
I move dissent to your ruling, Councillor Murray. Our code of meeting practice says that every council has a right to speak on the issue. Therefore, I'm asking for Councillor O'Brien to be able to speak.
Councillor Robinson, our meeting practice is that there is a speaker, the mover speaks, the seconder speaks, then there is a speaker for, against and for. We've had a speaker
I
against.
suggest you read the code of meeting practice.
We are. Just stand by. Okay, Councillor Robertson, can you specify which clause?
Can, but I'll have to look.
Does that mean, Councillor Robinson, that if there is a motion that everyone agreed with, that all 11 of us would speak?
Look, Councillor Robinson.
Only if they wanted to. And if no councillor.
What a waste of time.
My position stands. So, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. It is with, I suppose, sadness and disappointment that this motion has been perceived as potentially disrespectful to the community. I actually believe that the situation that we're in, full stop, is disrespectful for the community, that the behaviours or whatever else has been going on, enough's enough. Let's move forward in a constructive way. The community is very clear about wanting stability, wanting certainty and strong leadership, and let's not muddy the waters anymore around political game playing, and let's just move on in a honourable way to see fairness and respect for everybody involved in this. And so I believe that due to the fact that these matters, this is before the courts, then let's not bring this matter into the chamber, and certainly not today, and certainly not until the matter has been heard. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I would just request that Councillor Gray be asked to withdraw political game playing as an expression. I think that's insulting, and it's.
I'm putting this.
Sorry, that is a comment that has been made by the public. It's not necessarily my words. It's come from the community.
Well, with respect, you've said it. You've published it, Councillor Gray, and I ask you to withdraw it. That's all.
I am putting the vote. Again, can you put your hands close to your head, please? So those people in favour of the substantive motion, raise your hands, please. Andrew Brown, I count 5.
Yeah, I concur.
Those people against the substantive motion, raise your hands, please. I count, Andrew, I count 6. So if you just keep your hands up, please, until all those 2, 4, 6. The substantive motion is lost. Thank you. Moving on to item 7.1. This is Councillor Robinson. After a move and a second, please. Councillor O'Brien, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor O'Brien.
I was actually meant to second that one, Mr. Dr. Chair, Mayor. Could I please be the second speaker for this, and could I give the first speaking please to Councillor O'Connor?
Councillor O'Brien, you were the first with your hand up, so I've called you. So you're the mover.
This issue we brought back again because I suppose most of a great deal of the community feel very, very passionate about this. So we've continued to represent those people. We certainly feel that we don't have enough information and we don't have the report in which to go ahead with this. The report isn't publicly available. It's such a huge decision to be made without this report.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. The business case was in the February documents in the attachment, so everybody had the same information.
Okay. The public don't have this report.
Councillors, please just let Councillor O'Brien speak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have been contacted by a great deal of the public who feel that they don't have access to this report and that they don't understand the decision on which it's made. Also, people feel very concerned about closing of the rail corridor. This is a gigantic decision. They also feel that other tourist projects have not been considered sufficiently. For example, the possibility of a heritage train tourism, that's also been something that the community are very, very interested in. We also, finance at the moment is such that we probably will have great difficulty funding such a project for the foreseeable future, and because of that, closing down the rail corridor is perhaps, severely premature, and it's this one in particular that I have great concern about. We also very much want Guyra to have great tourist potentials. We just don't feel putting one on the table is the answer to their prayers. We feel there are many other projects that haven't been considered. Such an enormous undertaking is, I think, very frightening for many of the community, and many of the community aren't in support of this. I understand there are people who are very much in support of this and feel very passionate about it, but I don't think it has overwhelming community support. And I just urge at least to reconsider the idea of closing the corridor. That is, this means that no other projects are possible if that happens. I know that it's not council who will do this. It has to be recommended to go to the state, but it is a very Mayor, is there a problem with what I'm saying?
Councillor O'Brien, but you mentioned close the corridor. That is incorrect. They're transferring the corridor to another use, so it's actually factually incorrect. But go ahead with your argument.
Okay. I believe that if part 2 of it says recommending to close the corridor for rail transport, so that it's it's a huge move for the community. Again, I know that we probably in this council don't have that support, but I feel incumbent to continue to support the majority of the community who feel very passionate that they do not want the corridor to be used for anything other than future transport for trains. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd like to say that we need to take a much bigger picture. Councillor Witters said at a previous meeting that he was concerned about this because he said if this rail trail project, which I have to differ with you, Councillor Murray, this actual motion that we're trying to rescind today relates to the closure under the Transport Administration Act of the rail corridor. I don't think the public should be deceived by suggestion that it's just another use. It's not. In order for it to be used as a rail trail, the corridor will have to be legally closed by an Act of Parliament. And Part C of this, I believe it's Part C, I can't say it, relates to Council trying to move or persuade the state government to close the corridor under the Transport Administration Act. The result of that will be that it becomes simply another piece of Crown land, which has not any safety or guarantee of being devoted to public transport. So let there be no mistake about the significance and the gravity of the decision that Council is trying to make here against an enormous amount of public support for the contrary position. Over 30 submissions have been made by the public at very little notice, I might add, in relation to this. And I think if you scratch those submissions, you'll find that there's an enormous hostility in our community to closing the rail corridor. And that is my main concern today. But right now, I want to take you to the Arup, an international consultancy report dated 2019. It's called the Future of Rail Report. I'm going to be circulating and working on this hereafter, regardless of whatever the result of today's vote is. But I quote from the Arup report. It says, our vision is this: in 2050, passenger and freight rail will form the backbone of the transport system, linking major urban hubs and feeding into multimodal local transport networks. Rail service will be able to cross borders without delays or technical barriers, providing a competitive option to air or road travel. As the industry moves towards 2050 and beyond, rail will become increasingly dynamic, innovative, sustainable and competitive, ensuring a bright future as part of a truly integrated transport networks. We've recently had two major impacts. We've got a climate change problem that we've got to deal with. It's absolutely undisputed that rail, in terms of climate change and CO2 emissions, is far more efficient, both financially, but also in terms of its emissions. Secondly, we've now had the impact of a global pandemic. And what I want to say about that is that rail, because it's a cheaper form of infrastructure than air, we've seen the volatility and the fragility of air services, especially to the region, with the collapse of Virgin. Air services, which probably only a year ago we thought, were our main source of communication internodally and with capital cities and with export centres, has now proven to be not the principal form of sensible transport, both for freight and for passenger services. The other point about this is that we've already heard from Alex Classens that there is an alternative tourism use of this corridor, and that alternative is Heritage Rail, which commands a much wider usage.
Councillor O'Connor, your time's up. Speaker against the motion, please, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bailey, you've got to turn your microphone on, and then please turn it off after you speak.
Who says this council doesn't believe in recycling? Because here we go again, back over the old ground. And how can you say you're closing a rail line that hasn't been used for over 30 years? Now, I can't understand how people can say that we're closing something that hasn't been used for 30 years. Why was it closed? It was closed because people didn't use the rail line. People didn't use the rail line going north to Tenterfield. 5 passengers on a train going to Tenterfield, where 3 of them were state rail staff and 2 of them were on pensions, is hardly a viable alternative. As to the thought about a heritage train, if there's such a great demand for a heritage train, why isn't there one running from Armidale down to Walker Road? A lovely spot for lunch. Why have the Rail Heritage Group not prepared the rail carriages that sit abandoned up at the old rail depot? I think it shows that people have moved on. We've been over this ground so many times. Imagine if we'd approved it 18 months ago. We'd be a lot further advanced. And for Councillor O'Brien, I find it fascinating. Your own leader of the Labor Party has announced a $430 million fund for rail trail. You've also got a situation where Mick Veitch, a high-profile MLC and shadow minister, is a passionate believer of the rail trail. In actual fact, he attended the opening of the Rosewood Tumbarumba rail trail and was passionately in favour of it. So there are some things that I think need to be moved forward. The Great Northern Rail Line has been dominated by out-of-towners. If you looked at the Facebook posts that were coming in from all over the place, they are coming in from people who have got no association with Armidale, no association with the region, and are just stirrers. So I don't take much notice of them. And as to the cost, well, we'll just write another cheque out. We're only in debt. What was it last night? $600 billion. Let's write another cheque out for $250 or $300 billion, so that nobody can use the rail line. And then the next point is, you talk about it will never be able to be used as rail again. What happened with the Inland Rail route? Guess what? The government resumed the land from ratepayers and landholders, and they can then put a rail line through it, and they could do exactly the same here. So it's no different. Who would use it? Who would use it beside passengers? Oh, I know, freight. John Holland have done 3 studies that showed that opening a rail line north is not financially viable. No livestock movements in New South Wales because New South Wales no longer owns any necessarily rolling stock to move cows and sheep. Imagine purchasing, if they did, 500 head of sheep in Guyra, having to truck them to a rail siding, truck them to Tamworth, take them off there, put them on another truck, take them to Wallamore to be killed. What an efficient use. Costers have said they won't use the train service. So what does that mean? It means general freight will be an absolute waste of time. Yes, I suppose you'll get 1 or 2 parcels on it, but that's not going to pay the bills. I think we need to realise that this is the greatest tourism potential we have in this region. The Tumbarumba Rosewood line reopened about 6 weeks ago in the middle of the COVID-19 disaster. And guess what? It was a virtual opening. It booked out Tumut, Tumbarumba and Batlow. And since then, they've had over 40,000 views of the video showing the virtues of the rail trail. So this is the opportunity. I don't want to be associated with people that always say, no, we don't do this, we don't do that. We've got to be positive and move forward. This is a perfect example of making things happen. So I'm very much passionate that we just...
Thank you, Councillor Bailey, you ran out of time. So, Councillor Widders, I get you. You've had your hand up. Do you wish to speak against for the rescission? So, Councillor Widders,
I'm going to speak. I would say against the rail trust. I say it's at the moment for the rescission motion, but at the end of it, we'll see whether it's still for the rescission motion. In regards to the rail trail, again, the straw man comparisons of 30 odd years ago, if no one used it, we're not looking for the past. That's in the past. We're looking to build something for the future. And so using the numbers from 30 years ago, you can come up with anything. No one drove 4-wheel drives from here to Tumbarumba and back 30 years ago. So why have 4-wheel drives on that road? Like, you can make up anything you want, what happened in the past. We're looking to go for the future. This specific proposal about the rail trail, I think, is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's all eggs in one basket. I think there's more opportunities that need to be explored in regards to bringing tourism. I think a rail and trails needs to be looked at. A touristy sort of train on the Northern Line needs to be looked at. Again, if this proposal was as good as what the proponents of it are saying, it would stand up to scrutiny from other proposals as well. I still think there's a lot of uneasiness within myself in regards to why this is being pushed so hard in this specific proposal, whether there's something at the back of the shed or in the darkness that we don't know about that's pushing this along. I suppose only time will tell. So that's my thoughts on the rail trail. My thoughts on this rescission motion is, though, the proponents of the rescission motion, even though I agree with them in regards to the rail trail, tend to say a lot that the majority should govern. So the majority, even though I disagree, has numerous times voted to continue this proposal along. So to continue to throw rescission motions every time something like this comes up flies in the face of what they continue to say on other motions and in social media. You can't have your cake and eat it. If you want the majority to govern on certain issues, you've got to let the majority govern on all issues. So unless you've got evidence within a rescission.
sorry, Councillor Widders, but you are debating on the rescission motion itself, and you've digressed from that.
If you let me get to the finish of it, I'll get to it. So just in regards to this rescission motion, I probably am going to not vote at all because I'm conflicted. The fact that I don't support the rail trail, but supporting the rescission motion because we've already had the majority govern numerous times on this. So I'm going to turn my camera off and not vote at all.
So thank you, Councillor Witters. A speaker against the rescission motion, Councillor Galletley.
I've got a question more than anything else. Brad Witters, Councillor Witters, I'm wondering where he's got his information about the four-wheel drives to Tumbarumba. I'm just curious. I don't think that's quite right, I'm afraid.
Councillor Galletley, Councillor Witters, as he said, has switched off his camera and microphone. So
even before the debate's finished. Oh, that's very good of him. Thank you.
A speaker against the rescission motion. Councillor Robertson.
Well, like Councillor Witters, I think there are problems with this, so I'm not really speaking either for or against it. I signed the rescission motion because I felt that a project costing over 20 million should be considered as part of Council's entire budget setting process, especially given the divisions in the community over this. I'm also critically aware that Council staff told us at our budget impact workshop that despite all the money being spent by federal and state governments and the fact that we need to keep afloat during this pandemic, local councils still have such terrible money problems that if we have to borrow from restricted funds, the New South Wales Treasury Corporation would consider us financially unsustainable. And I think that's a real problem. So I think that putting this motion at the minute to council is premature. What I'd like to see is a real vision, a plan for this community that uses our scarce resources in the best possible way. Could, for example, we achieve a lot more and even spend a lot less money by improving our current cycleway with proper signs, advertising material at the visitor centre and linking it into with a super playground? I think that if we were able to look at the whole picture as part of the budget process, we'd probably be doing a lot better job for our community. And that, I think, should be the duty of every councillor. And I'm really sad that this is not being allowed to happen. And I really hope for better days to come. And like Councillor Witters, my only option at the moment, therefore, is to leave this virtual room in order not vote so that I can fulfill my obligations of complying with the code of meeting practice to make informed decisions made on quality information. And that includes seeing the whole picture. It's the basic requirement of good governance. So again, thank you and see you after the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question, please?
Councillor Bailey.
The statement was made that Council has received a submission from the Heritage Rail Group with regards to the rail trail. Could the CEO or one of the general managers tell us when that submission was received and why it wasn't circulated to the councillors?
Stand by, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I have to confess I don't recall having received one, but we will take the question on notice and determine whether one was received and if it was, circulate to councillors accordingly.
Okay, moving on with, is there a speaker for the rescission motion? Is there a speaker either way? Otherwise, I'll put it to Councillor O'Brien for right reply. Councillor O'Brien.
No, on behalf, yes, sorry, I just got on. Very happy for it to go to the vote as it is. I can see we're probably as much as we feel strongly about it, we're not going to be changing people's minds at this stage. There's a long way to go in the history of this thing, and I believe probably in the future there may be a different context to make a different decision. So I will just happy to go to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. So those people in favour of the rescission motion, raise their hand, please. So, Mr Brown, I count 2. And Mr Brown, also count that Councillor Robinson and Councillor Widders have abstained. So they've left the room. Okay, can I have...
Dr. Mayor, we can't abstain, but they're absent from the room.
Absent,
so.
yes.
Yeah.
So can I have those people against the rescission motion raise their hands, please? Councillor Tyler, you for or against? Just to clarify, Councillor Tyler, you vote yes, thank you. So, Mr Brown, have you got those votes?
Yes. Thank you, we concur.
So the rescission motion is lost. Councillors, moving on to item 8.1, Friends of the ABC. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Martin and Councillor Tiley. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. It's fairly straightforward, self-explanatory motion. It was just to thank and acknowledge the ABC staff for their dedication to keep our region informed during the recent months of devastating bushfires. The updates on the progression of the fires was of great assistance, particularly to those in the rural community. So we just want to put forward a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Tiley.
Obviously, something's happened.
Councillor Tiley, can you, Councillor Tiley is not connected audio-wise.
Hello.
Dr. Mayor, sorry, when you mute all, it mutes Councillor Tiley on the phone, and then Councillor Tiley doesn't have the capacity to unmute himself. So I've unmuted him, but just to be mindful, when you mute all, it mutes Councillor Tiley as well.
Sorry, Councillor Tiley.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
You can hear me now? Yeah, my screen seems to be about 20 seconds slower. That's why my hands are all over the place. I'm sorry about that. It's technology beating me.
Go ahead, Councillor Tiley.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Just that you don't seem to hear me. And anyway, that last vote, I was probably 20 seconds behind. That's because my technology was behind. Anyway, carry on.
So, Councillor Tiley, this is the decision 8.1 or item 8.1. I took your hand raised as I seconded it.
No, no, I didn't. I'm happy to second it, but it wasn't intended. It was on the previous motion. Okay, but I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to that? Because Councillor Martin's already spoken this.
No, it's self-explanatory, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
I'll take it. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Otherwise, I will put it to the vote. Those people in favour, please raise your hands. And we'll have to wait for Councillor Tiley. Can you hear? Are you for?
Yes, I'm for, Mr. Mayor. My hand's in the air, but it's not showing on the screen. I'm for the motion.
Thank you. That's Mr. Brown. I think that's unanimous. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest we write not only to the ABC generally, but also to Anna Moulder, the regional manager in Tamworth?
I can do that.
Yes, Councillor Bailey, that'll be a good idea. Thank you. Moving on to 8.2, which is the Air Quality Working Group. Can I have a move and a second? Councillor Robertson and Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Robertson.
Okay, well, this is a very serious issue, especially if COVID-19 ever takes off in Armidale, which I really, really sincerely hope it doesn't, because there's research from the USA and Italy that air pollution increases the risk. COVID-19 death counts were compared by Harvard researchers with PM 2.5 pollution in over 3,000 counties in the United States, representing 98% of the population. And they found that every 1 microgram per cubic meter of PM 2.5 exposure increased COVID-19 death rates by 15%. And if that's the effect of 1 microgram per cubic meter, what might the effect be of 20 or 40 micrograms per cubic meter? The levels we've been measuring in Armidale. What happens if we have a cluster of cases after the lockdown? And I hope you'll all agree that the best way to manage this risk is to set up an air quality working group as soon as possible and try to involve appropriate health and medical researchers. We've a sound basis in the form of the Wood Smoke Advisory Group report that went to Council in December, but was then deferred until February. And somehow Council staff then omitted it to put it to the April meeting, or the February and then the April meeting. And all these delays have been very, very unfortunate. But we have to move on. Council's December resolution empowered committees to set up working groups as long as the matters lie within the committee's terms of reference. And air quality is definitely within ESAC's terms of reference. The ESAC February meeting unanimously approved the terms of reference and expressions of interest process for an air quality working group, and there were no votes against it at the April meeting. Other committees have set up working groups, including the Regional Growth and Place Activation Committee. ESAC needs to do the same. So let's get on with the job, please. Thank you.
Can I just get a question through Councillor Robinson? Is that you've already mentioned that there's an external working group that came up with a report which had medical qualified people on it. Why are we reinventing the wheel? If you can just clarify, please.
Well, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're continuing it. The problem with having one single report going to Council and one where Council already admits that there is real problems with the budget and that all the recommendations will be referred to the Manager for Development and Regulated Services. And the report that went to Council basically said that there was not very much money to do anything. We have lots of very skilled people, including medical people, though I'm not sure there was anybody who was medical qualified on that group. I'm pretty certain there wasn't. But if we can get them this time, we can actually have a more dynamic interface with the community that will really help take this off, will really get the process working. And if we don't set that process working, if we don't have continual expertise and continual consideration of the proposals as matters change, as they have with COVID-19, then we are really tying one hand behind our back. So we really need to get a group together, get community consensus, and get on with the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Brien, I believe you seconded this. Councillor O'Brien, you've got to turn your microphone on, please.
Sorry, there's a very long screen and I'm watching other people. It takes me a while to get back to mine. I believe the issue around this, the most overriding problematic issue around this, I think there is some concern that the council staff has the potential of appearing to be inappropriately intervening in legally constituted committees.
Councillor O'Brien,
I haven't finished yet.
Yeah, I'm just cautioning you.
I said has the appearance of potentially appearing to be intervening. I couldn't get more cautious than what I'm saying, but there seems to be some inconsistencies around the respect of the terms of references for various committees. Some committees seem to have working groups that.
Brian, the terms of reference for committees is up to they've been developed beforehand.
Yeah,
so
yes, and I'm speaking, Mr. Mayor. Okay. The terms of references on that are put through council and that we vote on seems to be not followed exactly by some of the and Councillor Robinson might be able to talk in a bit more detail about how that's happened with hers and how it's happened with a few other committees. So there is some concern there that motions made by council regarding how the how the committees should be constituted and how their working groups should be allowed to work under the decisions made by the chair rather than by you or by staff. There seems to be some inconsistency of understanding how this is applied. And I have concern that there is the appearance of inappropriate intervention in committee meetings. I have seen some examples of this, and I think this is the reason why I'm supporting Councillor Robinson's.
Councillor O'Brien, the terms of reference vary between various committees and how they operate varies. So you do not appear to be talking to the 8.2. So
I am talking about 8.2.
I am also reminding you that this is a public broadcast. So
I'm not understanding what it is that you're so concerned about. I'm concerned that the terms of reference that were voted about chairs being able to decide what should happen with their working groups, there is some inconsistencies about how that is applied. And I think Councillor Robinson probably didn't get around to that part there, but I have seen it and witnessed and heard this through the council meetings and through committees. Perhaps you could clarify whether terms of whether. Hang on.
I will caution you that if you're making derogatory statements about staff.
I'm not making derogatory statements about staff. I'm saying if the terms of references regarding whether chairs can make decisions, let me finish, whether the chairs can make decisions about how their working groups operated, if there's some inconsistency around that, then there possibly needs some clarification, because it could have the appearance of inappropriate intervention. That is my statement.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Do we have a speaker against the motion, please?
Yes,
I've got a question.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, hang on. There's Councillor Withers, I think. Was it Councillor Withers?
Yeah, just got a quick question. Just in regards to D of this motion, can I get a bit of clarification on whether the Climate Emergency and Air Quality Working Group is its own group that council have, or whether it's a subgroup of the ESAC committee, please?
I might pass
Well,
that
in
to...
fact, can I answer that?
Yes, that's why I just asked, Councillor Robinson.
Yeah. Okay, well, this motion was submitted a long time ago in March, when we hadn't set up the Climate Emergency Working Group. The Climate Emergency Working Group has now been set up, so that part of D can be removed. I just haven't got round to correcting the motion, and I should correct it and just say that authorises ESAC to review applications and select members for its Air Quality Working Group, which is entirely consistent with the idea as set up under A, that we had a council resolution in December which gave council advisory committees the power to set up working groups as long as their functions lie within the responsibilities of each committee. So that's clear that ESAC has the power to do that, and therefore this is really just following exactly onto that ESAC has recommended with no dissent that we do this for an Air Quality Working Group. So let's get on with the job.
Councillor Robinson, can I take it that you wish to remove that wording that's highlighted in yellow on the screen? Because as you said, it's already in act. So if you wish to have it removed, Councillor O'Brien, are you happy with that? Okay. Do we have a speaker, Councillor Bailey?
My fundamental concern is I'm concerned that the application process might be biased against certain people. For instance, I know that John Grills from Barbecues Galore and Peter Duckett, who represented the wood industry, were part of the Mayor's Review Committee. And I would hope that there be sufficient preparedness to ensure that those sorts of people would have an opportunity to serve on the air quality working group rather than be excluded. And I think that's where we need to ensure that the air quality working group represents a wide church, not just a narrow focus. So that's my concern. That's why, until I can get clarification, I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bailey, can you just to make sure I do not switch people off and therefore Councillor Tiley off, can you all, when you finish speaking, can you make sure you switch your microphone off, please? So, Speaker for the motion, Councillor O'Connor.
Unmuted.
Thank you, Chair. I do support the motion, and the reason for this is that there's never been a problem with having an air quality working group set up by this committee, which has an unbroken continuation since the Armidale Demerit Council carried through the merger process and into this newly merged council. It was very much a part always of this community, and the work that the working group, which is a sub-working group for the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, has done over decades, incredibly important in actually assisting Armidale to deal with the very, very real health concerns that are in this community, and I think have been really demonstrated now to be beyond the unfortunate debate that we had, earlier in the term of this council about whether there was a health issue. It's clear that when we had all that PM 2.5 pollution sweeping over Armidale and capital cities and the south coast with the major bushfires, that one of the major preoccupations for government was the impact of health problems, because it's absolutely beyond debate now that PM 2.5s are pollution, which is what you get from wood fires all the time and what you get from bushfire smoke on the occasions when you have these massive wildfires. It's the same pollutant. It's dreadfully damaging to human health, and it is a primary cause of injury to infants and old people, but it is a secondary cause of the aggravation and early termination of life in relation to people in that mid-band. I can personally say that every winter I cough more and more and more because my sensitivity to wood smoke is getting greater every year as I age. And I have many complaints from community members begging me as a councillor to really work hard on this issue. And I think it is a great shame that to a certain extent the effect of the external Wood Smoke Committee has been to delay the work of ESAC in relation to this. It's a very complex regulatory position and there needs to be work done by everybody. I've got no criticism of the Wood Smoke Working Group that this council set up at the Mayor's suggestion, and I have no criticism of ESAC and is setting up its own working group to promote this. We need all hands on deck to work on this because the regulatory situation is split between the federal, the state and local government, and it's a mess. And I, for one, would like to see this addressed in a lot more sensible advocacy. And with respect to Councillor Bailey's proposition that, we have to wait and wait and wait until we've got a broad church represented, can I say we don't have time for that? We do have a broad church represented. We need to get onto the health issues that have now been demonstrated across the world, really, with increasing wildfires across the world to be so critical to our community's health. So I absolutely support this motion because it is quite clear from advice from the Office of Local Government that we made a resolution in December that the ESAC was able to create its own working group. We made that a very clear resolution. If there was then the suggestion that there was some kind of ambiguity about that, that was resolved on advice from the Office of Local Government by a clear statement from all the councillors that voted for that right of the ESAC to set up its own working group, so long as it stayed within the terms of reference of its parent committee. That was clearly explained, and I think that it's long overdue that the working group which is a child or part of or subset of ESAC, should be able to be created without any further delay, and that it should not become any further political football. We just really need to get on with this. So please, I beg you to support Councillor Dr. Robinson's urgings that we let ESAC get on with this. They've been doing a brilliant job for decades, in fact. They're very learned people, you know, largely from the university and the community, and they should be able to set up a working group on air quality and get moving on this problem. And I absolutely deplore and beg councillors now to stop making this a political issue and just move on to let them do the vital work to protect our community's health. So please vote and support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Sorry, a speaker against the motion, Councillor Gillespie, you've got your hand up.
I believe we can do a better job with the wood smoke issues. There's no two ways about it. I still believe that we can, even though I've been told by some councillors that has been tried before and it's not successful or whatever. I think we're now, with all these different situations happening with the COVID thing, all other stuff that's happening, that we can still use a renewable resource, which is wood, which there is going to be plenty of dry wood about in years to come from our bad drought and everything. And we've just got to educate the public in burning safely. I don't think we have the right to take fires away. Yes, I want the air to be a lot better than what it is. But if this is something to start saying, right, we're taking wood fires away from the Armidale community and probably Guyra community. Look, I'm still sticking to my guns there. I think we've got to have a bit of common sense, and I'm all for getting some government money to, at least while we're here, to try to educate the people of Armidale and the surrounds to use their fires a lot more efficiently. And if this group could come to that sort of thing where, yes, they're willing to educate people, I'm all for it. But I'm definitely not for banning wood fires in Armidale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gillespie. Councillor Witters, do you wish to speak for the motion?
Yes, I do. And sitting back listening to some of the comments, I think we've digressed away from what the actual motion is. The motion is, as it's written, the debate around getting rid of wood fires or health or anything else is for another time and another motion. We need to just keep our debates and comment on what this actual motion is. Otherwise, we'll go down a rabbit hole that could be hard to come back out of. I do support this motion, but I've just got another quick question around D. Will the council, as its entity, be reviewing the applications and then going to ESAC, or is ESAC the only committee or whatever that will be looking at applications for people to come onto this committee?
Thank you, Councillor Witters. Anyone wish to speak against the motion?
Can I get an answer to my question, though? Of whether the council is looking at whether there's a double handling of applications from council and ESAC, or just ESAC on its own, please.
Councillor Witters, I believe it's going to be just ESAC. The speaker against or for? If not, I'll put it to Councillor Robinson. You're right to reply.
Thank you. Well, I think first it's worth clearing up one myth about this. Nobody has ever argued about taking wood fires away because we don't have the authority to do so. And even if we did, the Air Quality Working Group would first have to make a recommendation to ESAC, and then ESAC would have to make a recommendation to council. So nothing like that will ever happen unless there's a majority vote of councillors to do so, and we have the legislated authority to do so, which we certainly don't at the moment. We have no powers to do anything like that. So it's even extremely unlikely that the Air Quality Working Group, which we haven't set up yet, will actually do that. And the whole point about having ESAC, which is basically maybe at least 10 very highly experienced people review the applications, is to ensure that we have quality applications that follow the transparency and accountability. Because rather than having a couple of people review the applications behind closed doors and nobody knows why these applications have been accepted or refused, as happened with the Climate Emergency Working Group, the entire ESAC will be able to review the applications and we'll have transparency and accountability, and that ESAC will then be accountable to the entire community. So that's probably the best way to set up a working group under ESAC, is to have all members of ESAC the authority to review those applications. It's the fairest and most accountable method. So I therefore hope you will all support this, because we've established we have the power to do it. It's a very important and urgent issue to do something about. And the expertise of ESAC will probably, and an air quality working group, will help attract funds to this area to deal with this problem, make it a much better and healthier and more better place to live, and that's what we all want in the end. So please support this first step on the road of improving this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. So I'll put this to the vote. Councillor Tiley, are you still with us? Because your screen seems to have frozen.
It has. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You may have to verbalise it, please, because you won't be able to see your hand. So
I will. Okay.
Okay. All those people. Oh, sorry. Just before you go, Andrew Brown. Where does that put us if we cannot see Councillor Tiley?
Yeah, it does put us in an awkward position, Dr. Mayor. The requirement is for an audio-visual meeting and that councillors are visible for the vote. I wonder if Councillor Tiley might try to exit the meeting and come back. And perhaps, Dr. Mayor, we could just take a very short adjournment of a couple of minutes to allow Councillor Tiley to do so.
I'll move that.
I can hear you.
Sorry, Ian, we can't see you properly, and that's the problem.
I know. You're all frozen.
You're very pixelated.
Yeah, I know. You're all frozen on my screen too. Okay. I vote in support of that matter, if that helps.
So with this, can I move a motion for a 5-minute adjournment to allow Councillor Tiley to exit and re-enter the meeting?
I'd like that anyway for other reasons.
But can we have a show of hands for those people in support of this motion, please?
What?
Mr. Mayor, I'm back on audio. Everything's sweet.
Good. So those in favour of item 8.2. Andrew, I've got 6.
Yeah, Dr. Mayor, we're just updating the vote now.
7, is it?
I had 6.
Is that Brian?
Okay. Councillor O'Brien?
Can you check with that Councillor O'Brien, because I think she wants to vote supporting.
Well, she seconded it.
Have you got all these, Andrew? Mr. Brown?
He seems to be on the phone and not at the meeting.
And I think you find he entirely said that he was supporting it too before he came back on, so there's something going wrong there too, I presume.
No, councillor. Look, councillors, let's just look after your own vote. So we got those people voting against. There's 3. Okay, the motion is passed.
Unmuted.
Also, sorry, Mr. Mayor, could we recommit that positive vote? Because I think
I don't have my vote up there. Oh, yeah, it's there now.
So moving on to item 8.3. Before I put this, I declare the motion, if moved, would be unlawful due to the conflict created by legal proceedings. If conflicted councillors vote, implementation of the motion would be unlawful.
On what? Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, on what basis are you saying this? Because I'm about to move a motion of dissent once you've explained your reason.
Councillor O'Connor, it's based on legal advice provided. Well,
I think unfortunately I've had to be in the receiving end of some legal advice recently, and mine would be that this isn't a problem.
Councillor O'Connor, that is my advice that's the advice being provided to me, so I'm moving on that position. Moving on to 8.4.
Can you please explain where that leaves us? I mean, I propose to second this. I think Councillor Robinson proposes to move it. So I guess if we just proceed with the debate and then we can argue about the legalities later.
No, Councillor O'Connor, I can't, as I declared, I declare this motion unlawful. I can't put it to the vote.
And I move dissent.
Mr. Mayor.
I second.
So councillors, can I get the vote on those votes for the dissent? Raise your hands.
What are we voting on again?
Councillor Gillespie, it's a vote of dissent that Councillor Robinson has raised. So those people again, 5. Those people against, raise their hands. Councillor Bailey and Councillor Murat, dissent is, sorry, Councillor Bailey, you've got to hold your hand close to your face, please. 1, 2. Have you got those? Mr. Brown?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Murat is what we're waiting for. Councillor Murat, it doesn't vote, it's a no. Councillor, yep, thank you.
So by my
voice is breaking up. I'm having trouble understanding some of the stuff. We're voting on the dissent, are we?
Yes.
Rightio.
So the dissent is lost.
What?
We voted against the dissent.
Can we have Councillor Murat's confirmation that he voted against?
Too bad, Councillor. The call has been made. So moving on to 8.4.
Excuse me, I don't know what happened then. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, given the fragile technology.
Councillor O'Connor, there was a move.
I need to know what happened.
Councillor O'Connor, there was a vote taken. So moving on to 8.4.
And Councillor Murat said he couldn't hear it. I move that we recommit the vote.
Councillor, we've moved on to 8.4. Can I have a move? This is from Councillor Robertson. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? If there's no mover and a seconder, we will move on.
What are we doing? I'm not aware of what item we're up to, Councillor Murray.
Councillor O'Connor, I'm not sure if your microphone and speaker are working, but it's 8.4.
Can you please clarify
Mr. Mayor, I
what
had
situation
Councillor
you're reviewing
Robinson.
last vote?
Councillors, it's item
I heard
8.4.
Councillor Robinson calling for a recommittal.
Yeah, I move a recommittal of the vote for 8.8.
Councillor Margaret O'Connor moved. Is there a seconder?
No,
Councillor
I am
Robertson.
still debating 8.3.
This is for a recommittal of the vote for 8.3.
Correct.
Councillors, we have already moved on from 8.3.
Mr. Mayor, if you keep muting me when I'm in the middle of trying to participate in the meeting, you cannot.
Councillors, I have already made a ruling.
Well,
Can I
there's
make a point of order, please, Mr. Mayor, and the fact that you, in regards to the code of meeting practice, you've already made the decision and the vote has been committed. We're now on to 8.4, and that the councillors follow the rules of the code of meeting practice and move along.
Oh, no, not at all. The code of meeting practice requires you.
I know. Councillors, we are moving on. It is 8.4. If there's no movement in a second, I'm moving on to 8.5. Okay. Councillor O'Connor, you move.
Move or second.
Is there a seconder?
I want to record my dissent from the treatment with 8.3.
Okay, if there's no seconder, I move to 8.5. Is that 8.5?
I move.
So 8.5?
I've spoken to Andrew Murat and he did not understand 8.3. He would like a revote. Thank you very much. That would be good.
So, councillors, we have already made a decision. We've moved on to 8.5. If Councillor Murat
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go back to 8.3 and.
Councillors, we have
This is
moved on.
procedural unfairness. Procedural unfairness.
So 8.5.
Mr. Mayor, I note that you keep hitting me when I'm moving a motion. I mean, that's not procedural fairness. You've now got 3 or 4 councillors that want to go back to 8.3 and recommit
Point
the
of
vote.
order, Mr. Mayor. Councillor O'Connor has been told numerous times that we have moved on, and she's not following the code of meeting practice.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question which you didn't acknowledge me before 8.3 was put to the vote, and I think it would have materially influenced people. That question was, the legal advice that you obtained, was that after the L&E court late yesterday issued its orders which said only that we couldn't introduce a motion of termination of the CEO or a motion to reduce her powers. That's all the order said. So I don't know why this can't be considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
The advice of the conflict or the bias was received before the orders yesterday.
So when was the advice obtained? Since 5 o'clock yesterday?
Councillor Tiley, the advice I'm given is that advice with regard to unlawful was prior to, but is also current.
It's not current, Mr. Mayor. In light of the injunction order, it's not current. There's only two factors we can't discuss or introduce. Anything else we can. You've got to read the order.
Councillors,
Mr. Mayor, I share with the order.
through.
I'm aware of the wording of the order at 5 p.m. yesterday.
Councillor O'Connor, would you mind? I'm going to ask Andrew to speak to that.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. In accordance with the meeting code of practice, item 15.13, can we just look at having our 15-minute adjournment?
Thank you, Councillor Gray. What I'd like is just Andrew, while the issue is fresh on people's mind, just to provide advice on this.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. So when the proceedings commenced with the Land and Environment Court, we sought advice on these motions that were in relation to matters before the court. Advice that we were given from our legal representative at that time was that councillors who are, there is a perceived infection with bias would make any decision on these particular matters unlawful, to the extent that the implementation of the motion would be unlawful. So just to clarify, the motion itself would not be unlawful, but simply that councillors voting on a matter whereby they are conflicted with the apprehension of bias, the implementation of that would therefore be unlawful. We sought advice yesterday afternoon, and that reaffirmed advice. Councillor O'Connor, can I get you to mute? We're getting a lot of feedback come back through your, thank you. That advice was reaffirmed by our legal representatives yesterday, that given the matter before the Land and Environment Court, given that these matters in relation that are being considered in the notice of motion directly relate to those matters, that it would not be appropriate, and that those councillors who are part of those proceedings are conflicted, and therefore due to the apprehension of bias, and therefore implementing the motions would be unlawful.
Thank you, Mr.
Can you
Brown.
please explain, can Andrew also explain how they are related to, directly related to the matters before?
Mr. Brown, did you get that question?
Apologies, Dr. Mayor, again, we're getting a lot of feedback through Councillor O'Connor when she has her mic unmuted. So perhaps if Councillor Robinson could just repeat that.
Yeah, I'd just like to have an explanation as to how these matters which went before the Information and Privacy Commission relate in any way to the matters before the court, since they seem to have been they seem to have started a long time before that, and do not appear to be in any way related to the bias in relation to the current matters before the court. And in fact, it might even help clarify.
Yeah, understand your point, Councillor Robinson. Just to clarify, points A and B are not the issue. Sorry, let me just bring up the motion in front of me. The issue is in relation to C. I note that A and B have been dealt with, that the public officer for council has considered the request of the IPC, reviewed the matters and has dealt with them in accordance with the GIPA Act and the powers of the public officer. In relation to C, those materials are some of the materials that will be considered by the Land and Environment Court in their proceedings, and therefore that is where the conflict arises, just in relation to C.
You're saying we can vote on A and B? Because they haven't been, according to your email, which I received on the 23rd of April, we could have a council motion to release that information. That was clearly what you said on that particular day. So I'm following those instructions.
Yeah, again, councillor, that has since been superseded by the fact that there are now Land and Environment Court proceedings. As I stated, the council can vote. There is no issue with the lawfulness of this motion. The lawfulness question comes to arise when councillors who are infected with an apprehension of bias vote on the proceedings. If those councillors wish to recluse themselves from this vote, then the matter can go to the remaining councillors, and the implementation of that motion would therefore be lawful. That is the advice that we have been given from very experienced legal representatives. So that is the advice that we have passed on.
Can I move in that case? I don't want to disrespect. I would like to move that this matter be deferred to our...
Councillors, we have voted on this. We have moved on to, and you got your explanation, Councillor Tiley. We have moved on to 8.5. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please? If not, I'll move on from that. Councillor O'Connor moved. Councillor Robertson second. Councillor O'Connor. Councillor O'Connor, you're doing a lot of talking, but no one's listening because you haven't got your microphone switched on.
Unmuted. So nice. Such a nice way of putting that, Mr. Chair. Look, our budget papers are showing that there's a quite large legal expenditure at the moment and anticipated. And I think just for that councillors would benefit from knowing what the scope documents are in relation to all of our solicitors on our panel. That's why I've put this motion up, so that we have a better understanding of the extent of our legal expenditure.
Councillor Robinson, I believe you seconded this. O'Brien.
I did not second this.
So, Councillor Robertson, were you the seconder?
I was the seconder, yes.
Oh, sorry. It's Councillor Robertson.
Okay, well, again, this is something where we have been told that we have a critical budget issue, and councillors need to take this into consideration. And particularly in regard to legal expenses, which seem to be going through the roof. We really need to understand what we're up for and what's going on, and make sure all councillors have an can make informed decisions on this issue. After all, none of us would really like to have the claim that we are financially unsustainable. So, especially when we've got so many other difficulties. So let's find this out. The more information we have, the more informed decisions and the better we can be to represent our community.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Speaker against? Anyone to speak for it? Otherwise, I'll put the vote. Now, Councillor Tiley is not present. So let's put it to the vote. Those people in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, those people against?
Can we have a clarification as to why Councillor Tiley is not?
No, councillors, it is up to the individual councillor to ensure that they're visible for during the meeting. So the motion is lost.
It's up to the chair to ensure that for procedural fairness is adhered to as well. So I think we should try and find out what happened to Ian Tiley.
Councillor Tiley's back.
Yeah,
It'd be no different if someone got up and went to the toilet at a normal meeting.
No, I have to feed my diabetes, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry. I was having a whoopsie. I'm right now. Okay.
Yep, good. 8.6.
Can we therefore recommit the vote?
No, Councillor,
I move that we recommit the vote.
we have made a decision. Goodness sake. So moving on to 8.6. Can I have a move and a seconder, please? Councillor O'Connor. There's no seconders, so I'll
Mr. Mayor,
Hang on,
Mayor, we should
this is a
withdraw that
second.
motion.
I've asked for a move and a seconder. Councillor O'Connor, no other. Now,
No,
councillors,
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I wish to withdraw it. I wish
Okay.
to withdraw the motion.
Oh, okay. Motion withdrawn. Moving on to 8.7. 8.7, again, I declare the motion, if moved, would be unlawful due to the conflict created by legal proceedings. If conflicted councillors vote, implementation of the motion would be unlawful. So moving on to 8.
Again, I move dissent. I move dissent.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Connor, can I have a vote then on the dissent? Those people in favour of dissent? Those people against the dissent? Councillor Murat, what's... So, did I get the... Yes. The dissent is lost. Now, moving on to 9.1. The Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee.
Mr. Mayor, I will move.
Councillor Tiley moved.
I will move that 9.1, 12.1 and 12.2, all being matters relating to the Art and Cultural Committee, be dealt with together. That's point 1. Point 2, that former chair of the committee, Councillor O'Connor, be restored to that position. And point 3, that all other recommendations from the 2 committee meetings be endorsed by the council.
Do I have a seconder? Is there a second? Councillor O'Connor, are you seconding? I can't, yep. So, Councillor Tiley?
Sorry, I don't wish to second. I'm happy for Councillor O'Brien to second, but I did want to point out that item A in 12.1 is a matter of contention from my perspective. Item 12.1A is a matter of contention.
Do I have a seconder though? I've got Councillor Tiley moved, but I don't have Councillor O'Brien. So, Councillor Tiley?
I'll reserve my right of reply, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor O'Brien?
No.
Anyone wish to speak against those 3 points? I think it's 3 or 4 points that Councillor Tyler raised.
Sorry, Dr. Mayor.
Sorry,
Dr. Mayor, could you please clarify or have Councillor Tiley clarify for Hayley for the minutes exactly what the amendment is?
It's not an amendment. I moved a substantive motion in 3 parts, Mr. Brown.
Apologies. That's just what we want to clarify.
Yep.
Councillor Tiley, if you could just clarify for Hayley so that she could get it right for the minutes, that's all.
That items 9.1, 12.1 and 12.2 be dealt with together. 2, that the former chairperson of the Art and Cultural Committee be reinstated to that position. And 3, that the recommendations contained in items 12. The other recommendations contained in 12.1 and 12.2 be endorsed.
Dr. Mayor, could I just converse with Mr. Waterson quickly, and we'll get back to you?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Brown.
Maybe we could clarify that and say that 12.1 except 12.1A.
You know what Zachary said? What I have written.
12.A may be conflicting though. Might need to pull that one too.
Councillors, anyone who wishes to speak against those, it's a standard motion. Councillor Withers.
Are we right to do it, or are we just waiting for Mr. Brown and Mr. Waterson to get back to you?
No, we're moving on, Councillor Withers, so you've got the floor.
Yeah, I suppose we'll call it as against for the moment, but just looking for clarification. I don't know whether we've received it at the last minute meetings or whatever, because these motions have been deferred, I think from Councillor O'Connor, and I'm happy to be corrected here, as there may have been some communication between her and the committee in regards to these, that she wanted to get some things around these things. So these were deferred from the last meeting, from memory. I'm just a bit concerned and looking for clarification on why this committee, the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee, have within their own meeting moved that the chair be replaced by the new elected chair, Caroline Downer. As I'm not on that committee and not privy to those discussions and reasonings, I'm looking for, before voting on this and voting on Councillor Tully's substantive motion, I'm looking for reasonings as to why that committee has decided that a change of the term of reference and a change of the chair to be brought to council to be decided on. We're looking for the reasonings because of that.
Thank you, Councillor Withers. The Councillor and O'Connor, can you keep your microphone switched off, please, until you're ready to speak, because there is a feedback. The reason is there was the external members, some of them external members came to us and they were not going to participate in the meeting if that chair remained in position. That was the backbone of it. They were dissatisfied with the way the chair was conducting meetings. Under the terms of reference, as it's been put on the documentation here, is the mayor can select the chair, and the mayor did. And those outcomes now that you're seeing and you're going to vote on, that Councillor Tiley has identified 12.1, 12.2, are the outcomes of that the new chair running that committee. So that's the reason, Councillor Withers.
Okay, so just in, I suppose in speaking against this, it's probably, I think Councillor Tiley may be able to answer my question in his right of reply, whether he actually is another councillor that's on that committee and he's privy to those conversations, and his reasoning in moving this motion on, I would say, contradicting the recommendations coming out of that committee in reinstating the previous chair.
Just to clarify, I don't think Councillor Tiley is on that committee. Councillor Tiley, can you nod your head, or you're not on that committee, I believe?
I'm here, Mr. Mayor. I'm preparing my right of reply.
But you're not a member of that committee?
No.
Which is the question. Good, thank you. So, has anyone spoken against this? Councillor Withers was asking questions. Is there a speaker against? Otherwise, there's no one against, so I'll put it to the vote. Those people in favour of the motion as on the screen.
Mr. Mayor, doesn't Councillor Tiley have a right of reply?
But no one has actually spoken against it, Councillor O'Connor.
Oh dear.
So,
Well, I still think Councillor Tiley can have his right of reply if he wants.
Well, I did ask to reserve a right of reply.
Councillor Robertson, can you identify in the code of meeting practice where, if there's no one speaking against the motion, where it is clear that I've got to have a right of reply? If not, I will. So I'll put that to the vote.
Is a code of meeting practice. Now,
So
I will read it. A councillor who made, and to any amendment to the conclusion of the debate before any motion where amended notice, a councillor who during a debate at a meeting of the council moves an original motion has the right to speak on each amendment to the motion and a right of general reply to all of his observations at the conclusion of the debate. That covers it.
Councillor Robinson, that might be true, but there's been no debate to reply to it. So there is nothing there to reply to, Councillor Robinson. So we'll put it to the vote that the motion that's been moved by Tiley, seconded by Councillor O'Brien, those three parts. So those people in favour of that, please raise your hands. The 6. Those people against? Councillor Bailey, your hand's way off to the side. You just have to bring it in closer, otherwise we can't see the vote.
I've always been a bit left-wing, sorry.
So the motion has been carried.
I'll look forward to the other councillors fronting the committee members to explain why they haven't done what they wanted them to do.
So moving on to item 9.2. Do I have a mover and a seconder? It's information. Okay, moving on to items 12.1 and 12.2 have already been covered. So questions on notice, they've already been answered. So councillors, just to expedite the meeting, I would like to go into closed session. So can I have a move and a second that we go into close? Councillor Martin, Councillor Gray, those in favour? Agreed, carried. Thank you. Now, can I have moved and seconded that those items agreed to in the closed session be endorsed in the open? So Councillor Martin, Councillor Gray. Councillors, at this time at 11:25, I will therefore close the meeting. Thank you for participating.